There was something in the air the night it all started. One of those nights when everything feels weird. Like a storm is about to break. But the sky is too clear to make sense. I had no idea what was coming, but my instinct did. It had been screaming at me for several weeks. Jessica entered the living area wearing a dress. I had not seen this previously. Tight. Short. When we initially started dating, she wore something like this. Back when she genuinely cared what I thought. She was on her phone, grinning at something on the screen, and barely acknowledged me. She said it casually as she walked away. Where? The sneer deepened. She looked up from her phone just long enough to ensure I noticed it. Party is there to find out who's having a party on Tuesday. She laughed. Like I said, something foolish. Does it matter? It mattered. It mattered because she seemed to want me to ask. She dangled something in front of me, waiting for me to bite. She then threw the match into the fuel. It is at Brandon's. I did not move, not a twitch. That was the only unexpected reaction she received. I could see it in the way her expression flared briefly, before she concealed it with boredom. Brandon, the ex, the one who, in her opinion, was a terrible mistake when we first started dating. The one she claimed she had no contact with. I could have asked 100 questions. Why now? Why him? Why the hell? She thought this was fine. But I failed to satisfy her. I just leaned back, my expression unreadable. All right, I replied. Jessica blinked. She didn't anticipate that. She was expecting a battle, possibly even wishing for one. She grabbed her clutch and slid her phone inside. Do not wait. I didn't because the moment she walked out the door, I began to work. Jessica assumed she had the upper hand in this game, but she had no idea I had previously flipped the board over. This was not the first time I thought something was wrong. There were too many late nights and too many excuses. I wasn't an idiot, and I wasn't going to sit around being treated like one. So, while she thought she was giving me a lesson by spending the night with her ex, I was tearing through the truth like a blade through paper. I brought out my laptop and opened her email. Nothing. But she wasn't dumb enough to leave evidence behind. Her texts, however, were another story. I'd seen her enter her passcode previously. People always believe they are careful, but muscle memory betrays them. I did not need to be a hacker. I simply needed to be paying attention to digits. Later, I got in. And what I discovered made my eyesight turn red. There were more than just messages. There were photographs, videos, and they were not elderly. The timestamps were current. She hadn't just started speaking with Brandon again. She never ceased doing that. I stared at the screen. My heartbeat was beating in my ears. Message after message. Photo after photo. Jessica had not just reconnected with Brandon. She had never let him leave. This was not an innocent party. This was not a one-time thing. This had been going on for months, perhaps even longer. I scrolled up, my fingers trembling with wrath. November, October, August. Their talk had a long history. So far, I felt ill. And the worst part? They weren't even hiding it. They laughed at me. About how I was very trusting, and how she could do whatever she wanted, and I would not suspect anything. He still has no idea. What? You're really getting away with it? Of course. He's extremely predictable. I tightened my jaw so tightly that it hurt. Predictable. I continued reading. I will be there all night. He won't even ask. She had planned this for the entire night. This entire stunt was a test. She wanted to test whether I would stop her and fight for her. Maybe she assumed I'd beg. Maybe she expected me to lose my temper and do something reckless, so she could turn everything on me. She didn't know who she was playing with. I took a deep breath and forced myself to remain calm. My initial thought was to burn everything down. To drive to that party and put a stop to the entire spectacle in the loudest, most savage manner possible. But no. That is exactly what she wanted. A scene. Drama. Something she could twist to make me the problem. No. If she wanted to demonstrate, I was going to offer her one. Just not the one she was expecting. I took up the phone and called. Hey, dude, I said when the other end of the line picked up. You still awake? My best friend Ryan responded groggily. Yeah? What up? Do you still have the truck? There was a pause. Then, yeah. Why? Meet me at my place in 1 hour. I said, I need to move some things. I could hear the bewilderment in his voice, but he did not ask any questions. That's the thing with true friends. They don't require explanations. I hung up and went to work. One started by packing my purse, not my things. Every drawer, closet, and small expensive item of jewelry I had purchased for her. I slammed open cabinets, grabbed everything she owned, and put it into suitcases, clothing, gun, makeup, pistol, shoes, perfume, and even the silly framed photographs she insisted on hanging up. Gone. When Ryan arrived, My living room resembled a baggage store that had blown. He stepped inside. Eyes widen. What the hell, dude? Please help me load this up. I cut in. Ryan paused, but he knew better than to push me at this point. We started pulling the suitcases out and throwing them in the back of his pickup. My mind was racing the entire time. What's next? Where was the greatest spot to leave everything? My first thought was of her parents' house. But she could twist that too easily. Then I got an idea. Perfect idea. I grabbed my phone again after we'd finished packing. And this time I texted Jessica. I hope you're having fun. When you get home, you'll be delighted with what awaits you. Then I smiled. Allow her to enjoy her little celebration. She had no idea the actual one was standing here, waiting for her. Ryan drove, and I glanced out the window, watching the city lights flash by. The adrenaline had settled into a cooler state. Not fury, not grief. Simply a sharp, cutting clarity. I knew exactly what I was doing. Jessica believed she had everything under control. She believed she could dance between two life, pulling the strings, making me look foolish. However, she was about to discover what happens when you push the wrong man too far. We approached the first stop, a modern, upmarket residential building. Jessica's best friend, Molly, resided here. Ryan shot me a strange glance. Are you sure about this? I grabbed one of the luggage from the truck bed and carried it to the door. Absolutely. Molly had been Jessica's accomplice in crime for as long as I could remember. The type of friend that supported bad behavior and spoke about men as if we were all disposable. I had never trusted her. And based on the texts I discovered, I had been correct. She knew about Brandon, probably helped Jessica cover it up. I pressed the buzzer. There was static, followed by a sleepy voice. Hello, it's me. Open up. A pause, followed by a click. I took the elevator up. I grasped the suitcase handle like a sword. Molly cracked the door, peering at me. Messy bun. Oversized hoodie. She had clearly been sleeping. What the hell are you doing here? I grinned and stepped forward. Delivery. I pushed the suitcase into her hands. Molly stumbled back. What the Jessica crap? I remarked, walking past her into the flat. I felt since you enjoy being involved in my marriage so much, you wouldn't mind assisting with this part too. Molly opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, I left the second suitcase inside the door. Oh, and tell her she can pick up the rest at Brandon's because that's where she'll be spending the night, correct? Molly's expression flashed. She had a brief feeling of shame before masking it with faux fury. You are insane. You cannot merely. I turned on my heel and walked away. Ryan was waiting near the truck, arms crossed. Damn, he mumbled. It was frigid. I smirked. We are just getting started. The subsequent stop was even better. Jessica had a favorite cafe, which she almost lived in. She is constantly posting her small aesthetic lattes and breakfasts on Instagram. It was also where she'd spent a lot of time messaging Brandon. I walked straight in. Suitcase in tow. We made our way past the few customers who were still there this late. The barista recognized me. Hey, is that Jessica's? I cut him off with a smile. Yeah. I thought I'd drop off some things for her. She adores this place. Okay, then I left the suitcase right there. Ryan was chuckling as I got back into the truck. You're ruthless, guy. I simply shrugged. She craved attention. Let us give her some. We made one more stop. Brandon's place. The house was lit up. Music is booming. The party was still going strong. Cars lined the street. I saw her automobile parked in the driveway. Perfect. Ryan moved beside me. What is the plan here? I took my time responding because I had several possibilities. So many choices. I could stroll in and embarrass her. I could wait until she staggered out and show her exactly what she had lost. I could do a lot of things. Instead, I opened the trunk and retrieved the remaining luggage. Hold this, I said, handing Ryan my phone. He frowned. What for? I grinned. Make a record of this. I stepped up to the front door and, without hesitation, rang the bell. The bass banged behind the door, laughter. Shouting out the distinct sound of a house party in full flow. It was nearly lyrical. Jessica was inside, thinking she was on top of the world, while I stood outside, ready to rip everything apart. Ryan had his camera going. I could feel it. The weight of the moment, the strain so strong that I could practically hear the seconds stretching out. The door swings open. Some guy I didn't recognize stood there with a drink in hand, and a red Solo cup dangling between his fingers. He was already halfway through a drunken hello when he halted, his gaze moving down to the bag at my feet and then up to me. Can I help you? I smiled. Yeah, I'm here to drop off something for Jessica. The guy's brow wrinkled. He turned his head over his shoulder and called back into the house. Yo. Yes. Some dude is here for you. The second time he said it, I heard her laugh from within, a thoughtless, vicious little laugh. The one she used when she was feeling proud. Then her voice. Tell him I'm busy. Ryan gave a calm opening. I didn't flinch or respond. I just picked up the luggage and stepped inside. The guy attempted to stop me. A half-hearted hello, guy. But I was already moving. I strode through that house as if I owned it. People turned and muttered. They knew, and the air altered accordingly. Some people recognized me. Some people simply knew that whatever was about to happen would be good. Then I spotted her. Jessica sat on the couch, Brandon's arms slung around her shoulders. She hadn't even looked at me yet. She was glancing at her phone, probably messaging me some bogus reason for why she'd be home late, while he drew her closer. Ryan murmured behind the camera. No way. I didn't say anything. I just stepped up and put the suitcase at her feet. Thud. Jessica flinched at the sound. Then she gently looked up, and I saw what happened. The shift, the perplexity. Then comes realization. Then there was pure, freezing panic. I hope you're having fun, I said. My voice remained steady. Calm to calm. Because you're not returning home. Silence. The entire party had gone quiet. Someone whistled. Brandon stood up and frowned. What's the problem, dude? I smiled. You for the most part. But do not worry, I'm going to repair that. Jessica sprang to her feet and stepped toward me. Listen. I could explain. I raised a hand. She shut up. I do not need an explanation, Jess. I read the messages. Boom. That was it. That was the killing shot. Her mouth opened. Closed. Her entire face had lost its color. Brandon's grasp on the drink intensified. People began murmuring, and the weight of embarrassment settled on her. Hello, guy. Perhaps we should take it outside. Brandon stated while standing up. I tilted my head slightly to look at him. Perhaps you should sit down. His jaw clenched. I noticed a glimmer of fight in his eyes. But he was not foolish. Not here. Not now. Jessica grabbed my arm. A big mistake. Let us chat. She whispered. Desperate. Now. Privately. I pulled back, shaking my head. Nah. You desired public. You wanted a show. I gestured toward the room. So, enjoy it. Then I turned to face the audience. You want to know the best part? I called out. They leaned in. I lifted my phone and tapped the screen. The texts. The proof. Broadcast it to anyone who was interested in viewing. Jessica let out a choking sound. Her hands rushed to her lips, and someone began laughing. Loud, followed by another, and then more. Jessica found herself standing in the heart of the wreckage. Brandon backed away from her. People took out their phones, whispering that she had nowhere to flee. Ryan followed closely behind me as I headed for the door. Before I stepped out, I looked over my shoulder. Only once. Have a good night, Jessica. Then I left. Ryan and I walked out of the house, but the chaos inside continued even after the door swung shut. I could still hear their voices. Jessica's desperate cries, Brandon yelling and laughing, murmurs spreading like wildfire. She was finished. Ryan was grinning like an idiot. Bro. I don't have any words. That was some cold-blooded, revenge movie-level shot. I sighed, my chest rising and falling as the adrenaline wore out. But I wasn't done yet, because I knew Jessica would not go down without a fight. We climbed back into the truck. Ryan handed me my phone, still recording. What happens now? Now. I checked the time. It was past midnight. Now we're waiting. He raised an eyebrow. For what? I locked eyes with him so she could see how much she was fed up. It did not take long. 20 minutes. That's how quickly it occurred. Jessica stormed out of the gathering. I knew because her car sped down the street, braking so hard in front of the home that I assumed she'd tear out the blasted mailbox. Ryan's hands tensed around the wheel. Oh, shit. I leaned back and watched as she stumbled out of the car. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was smudged, and her eyes were filled with panic. She appeared distraught, as if she had just lost control of the entire universe and had no idea what to do with herself. Then she noticed me. Boom. The target is locked. Jessica. Marched to the truck. Arms swung, face twisted with wrath. Heels click against the pavement. I did not move. Didn't say anything. Ryan let out a low whistle. Here we go. She reached my side of the truck and banged her hands against the door. What the hell is wrong with you? I carefully turned my head to meet her eyes, serene and unshaken. Untouchable. Excuse me. You have embarrassed me? She screamed. Her voice cracked in front of everybody. I stared at her for a long time. Then I answered, No, Jess, you humiliated yourself. I simply turned on the light so that everyone could see it. Her expression twisted, as if she wanted to slap me. Ryan leaned out the driver's side window and shook his head. You should probably take a step back, Jess. You're embarrassing yourself even more. She ignored him. Let me in, she demanded. I need to talk with you alone. I groaned and shook my head. You are not coming inside, Jess. Your belongings are already gone. Check Molly's apartment. Check. Your favorite cafe. I made sure you had options. Her eyes expanded. She took a step back, her chest rising and falling as if she was only now recognizing how far this had progressed. Then her expression changed. The wrath subsided and the act began. Her face wrinkled. Her lower lip twitched. She looked up at me, her voice breaking through the crocodile tears. We can solve this, baby, she whispered. I nearly laughed. You spent the night at your ex's place, Jessica. My voice remained steady. This was something you planned. You informed him that I was a joke. I would never leave. I would always forgive you. Her eyes fluttered. That one caught her eye. Say nothing. She did. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough to hit like a sharp blade. You believed you were giving me a lesson. I whispered, but the only one who was schooled tonight was you. Jessica's breath tightened. Her tears disappeared. Just like that. She realized it was finished. I nodded towards her automobile. Now go, Jess. Go figure out who you really are when no one is putting up with your nonsense. For a brief moment, I believed she may fight back one more time. But suddenly something inside her cracked. Her body stiffened. Her face twisted with hatred. And then she spat on my feet. I did not even flinch. She turned on her heel, stomped back to her car, and drove away into the darkness. Ryan exhaled and shook his head. This was ridiculous. I just watched the taillights fade away, and for the first time in a long time, I felt liberated. The hush inside the truck was thick. The sort that wraps around you after a storm, when the last thunderclap has passed. However, the air is still crackling from what has just happened. Ryan exhaled slowly, holding the wheel. That was what I knew, dude. I stroked my jaw, feeling the strain that remained in my muscles. She truly believed she could turn it on me. Ryan shook his head, still in amazement. That switch up was insane. From screaming banshee to Oscar-worthy grief, those are dramatic seconds. And when you turned her off, guy, I nearly felt horrible. I snorted. Don't. But I didn't. For the first time in months, perhaps years, I felt nothing for her. There is no more love, remorse, or anger. She had exhausted every ounce of kindness, and now she was left with nothing. But I knew Jessica. She was not done. She may have drove away tonight, but this wasn't the end for her. Not yet. Ryan examined his phone. What are the next steps? I breathed and looked out the windshield. The city lights blurred past the streets, disappearing as the night wore on. My house was waiting for me, but something told me I wasn't going back there right now. I needed to breathe. Drive, I mumbled. I don't care where. Just drive. Ryan nodded and drove onto the highway. We ended up in a 24-hour diner. One of those old-school establishments with checkered floors and buzzing neon lights that smelled like coffee and fried food. And for the first time that night, I realized I was hungry. We slid into the booth. The waitress barely looked up when pouring us coffee. Ryan stretched and let out a low whistle. Dude, you literally blew up your entire marriage in one night. Not a marriage. I corrected a lie. He nodded and drummed his fingers on the table. So what happens now? That was the true question, right? Because it wasn't only about Jessica. It was about what happened next. I looked down at my coffee. I'm filing tomorrow. Ryan lifted his eyebrow. Divorce? One nodded. He gave a quiet chuckle. She is going to lose her sanity. She already has. I mumbled. And I wasn't mistaken. While we sat in that quiet diner, Jessica was already planning her next move. At 3:42 a.m., my phone vibrated. Ryan and I were still at the diner, finishing our meals, when I looked at the TV. Jessica, of course. I showed Ryan the phone. He raised an eyebrow. Here we go. I responded, keeping my voice steady. What? First, there was only silence, then a breath. A weak and uneven breath. Baby, she whispered. I closed my eyes. Here we go. You won. Okay. Her voice crackled. Soft. Desperate. You've made your point. I botched up. God. I'm not even sure what I was thinking. I just want you to talk to me, please. I said nothing. You cannot just throw me away. She pleaded. We have been through too much. You love me. I know you do. I took a slow sip of coffee. Then I simply said, I don't. There is no more sound. Then take a strong inhalation. Jessica had spent years believing she had control, that she could push, tug, and twist my emotions any way she pleased. But she had never prepared for the day when I would simply let go. You do not mean that. She whispered. I slumped back in my seat. Either. More silence. Then her voice sharpened, becoming cold. So, that's it? She snapped. You just throw me away like trash. After everything, you cast yourself out. I answered calmly, I just cleaned up the mess. Ryan gave a low laugh. He shakes his head. Jessica's breath tightened. Fine. She spit. You think you're extremely strong. Do you believe you'll be happy without me? You will be miserable. You are nothing without me. I smiled. I guess we will find out. Then I hung up. And this time, I felt nothing. The next morning, I awoke to 26 missed calls. Jessica had snapped. I was not surprised. I had seen how her thinking functioned. She twisted things. She rewrote reality to fit her version of events. Last night, she implored. When that did not work, she'd threatened. And now? She was now desperate. I looked through my notifications. Missed calls, 12 voicemails, and dozens of texts. I opened the first one. Jessica, you can't just remove me like this. Call me 10. Another. Jessica, I am serious. If you don't respond, you'll regret it. I smirked. There it was. The actual Jessica slipped between the cracks, and then the next message appeared. Jessica, I informed your employer that you had been stealing from them. Good luck explaining it. I froze. What the hell? A slow burning wrath curled inside my chest. My profession and career were something I had created from the ground up. I had worked for years, climbed through hell to get where I was, and now she was attempting to burn it all down. I inhaled gently, forcing myself to remain calm. This was a bluff. She made a wild, dangerous move because she had nothing left. But, to be sure, I called. It rang twice before my boss answered. Hello? Hey. It's me, just checking in. Has anyone called you recently to ask about me? A pause, followed by a sigh. Yeah. I wasn't intending to bring it up. But since you asked, my grasp on the phone tightened. And a woman called, claiming you'd been stealing and concealing costs. To be honest, it sounded a little out of control. We knew it was false, but we had to make a report just to be safe. I closed my eyes. Jesus Christ, take a look. Don't get stressed over it. My boss proceeded. We understand it's ridiculous. I've already told HR to ignore it. Relief poured through me, but only beneath it. Pure cold rage. Jessica had just crossed a line from which she could not return. I hung up and quickly dialed her number. She answered the first ring. Oh, you care enough to call, she sneered. Jessica, I said, my voice calm. You have just committed the biggest mistake of your life. She laughed. Oh, please. Do you believe you can humiliate me without consequences? Do you think there will be no consequences? I let the silence stretch, allow her to hear the weight of her own words. Then I spoke. Jessica, I was prepared to walk away. I was prepared to let you keep whatever dignity you had left, but you've just shown me who you truly are. She paused. Just a second. What is that intended to mean? It means, I said slowly and deliberately, that I am finished playing nice. Jessica scoffed. What are you planning to do? Cry. Post more text. Do you think anyone will care? I smiled. She couldn't see it, but she could hear it. Feel it? No. Jessica Imamura. I am going to ruin you. Silence. And for the first time since everything began, she sounded terrified. You're not telling the truth. She whispered. Try me, I said. Then I hung up and proceeded to work. Jessica believed she was untouchable. She believed she could destroy my life and escape unscathed. She had no idea I was going to turn her entire world to ashes. I began with the thing she treasured the most. Her repute. Jessica thrived on attention. She built her entire identity around being immaculate. Envied. Adored. Social media. Her domain. She wasn't only active. She lived for it. The planned Instagram images, the meticulously composed tweets, and the never-ending desire for validation. So I struck her where it stung. I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and then uploaded everything. Every text, every lie. Every screenshot shows her smiling behind my back and talking about how easily she played me. Then I tagged her. I did not add a caption. I did not need one. The truth speaks for itself. Then I sat back, waiting. It took precisely 32 minutes before the first detonation. Jessica called. I let it ring. Then another call. Then 10 more missed calls in a row. Then the text started pouring in. Jessica. What the hell is wrong with you? Jessica. Take it down right now. Jessica. I swear to God, I will. I did not even bother responding. I just watched. And God, was it lovely. The comments section exploded. Wait. She cheated and brags about it. Lol. She deserves everything that comes her way. She publicly humiliated him. But now she's upset because he exposed her boo-hoo girl. I hope your next Brandon is worthwhile because you recently lost everything. She was finished, but I wasn't. Jessica's next step was expected. She went into full tantrum mode. First, she attempted to defend herself by posting a lengthy dramatic notes app apology on Instagram. Some mistakes were made. This is a private subject. We both have something to work on. Nobody purchased it. Then she turned against me. She posted a video. The eyes were crimson, and the voice trembled. I never intended to hurt him. She sniffed, playing the victim. The whole affair has been blown out of proportion. He's trying to wreck my life. And you know what? For the first time, she was correct. Because I wasn't finished yet. Jessica had one final safety net. Her job. She worked in public relations. The career in which your appearance is everything. So I called a reporter rather than her work. I kept it brief, pleasant, and factual. Jessica has been conducting a smear campaign against her husband since she was caught cheating. I have receipts, and I've included screenshots of her phony claims against me. It wasn't long before somebody did. The headline appeared that afternoon. A local public relations manager has been discovered in an adultery scandal, attempting to undermine her husband's career. Jessica's employer noticed it. The next thing I knew, her LinkedIn profile had been erased. She'd been fired. Ryan called me as soon as the news reached him. His speech was hushed. Bro, you ended her. I smirked while sipping my coffee. She killed herself because it was the truth. Was it not? Jessica had always believed that she was the main character, that she could do whatever she wanted, hurt whomever she wanted, and never face consequences. This time, however, she lost. For the first time in a long time, I wondered. I sat back and watched everything happen like a well-written movie. Jessica was free-falling. Her job is no more. Her reputation has been shattered. Her little fantasy world, in which she was the untouchable queen and played me for a fool while having Brandon on her side, was devastated. And now she was left with nothing but ruin. Ryan sent me a link. Jessica went private. Her social media accounts were all locked down. The public outcry had been harsh. Her comment sections were a war zone. Her former friends are turning on her. Her loyal fans are vanishing one by one. She thought she could control the story, but it now controls her. And then, just when I thought she had vanished, she reappeared. It was late. The home was peaceful. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the divorce paperwork I'd picked up earlier in the day. There was a knock. I already knew who it was. I did not move. Just let the silence linger. Then another knock. Harder. Desperate, the first stood slowly and made my way to the door. My heart was not thumping. My hands didn't shake. I was relaxed. Because this time I was in charge. I opened the door, and there she was. Jessica. She appeared devastated. Mascara-smudged hair, crazy face. Hollow from fatigue. This wasn't the woman who strolled out of my house, gloating and laughing, convinced she had won. This person has lost everything. I leaned against the doorframe. You look like crap. She swallowed as her throat worked. Can I come inside? I tilted my head and pretended to think about it. Jessica flinched as I left. Not a chance, I replied. Her lips separated. Baby, please. I crossed my arms. That is funny. Several nights ago, I was nothing without you. Now you're at my door. I checked my watch at 11:43 p.m. Her face crumbled as she begged. The action began. I lost my job, she muttered. I lost everything. I nodded. That seems rough. Her eyes flashed in annoyance. Do you really care? That made me smile. Really smile. Because I hadn't. Not anymore. I leaned in just enough to see her breathe. You didn't care that you were lying to me. You didn't care once you were in his bed. You did not care when you attempted to destroy me. Jessica bit her lips. Tears flowed. Thick. People won't hire me right now, she murmured shakily. Brandon won't even speak to me. That was funny. I let out a laugh. Did you think he would save you? I slowly said. Jessica, you were never special to him. Just convenient. She flinched. I saw it. When she realized she had genuinely lost, she looked beyond me and toward the home. What are you searching for? I inquired in a chilly voice. She swallowed hard, because there was a moment not long ago, when that would have destroyed me, where I would have let her words bite into my ribs, twist in my gut, and cause me to doubt myself. Not anymore. There is no us. I replied simply. Her breath caught. I love you. I laughed again. Jessica. I remarked, my voice filled with feigned pity. You don't even understand what love is. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She waited for my reaction. I did not. She swayed forward, as if she intended to touch me. She might try to convince me that she still had some control over me. I backed away from her. That was the final nail in the coffin. Jessica staggered. Her face wrinkled. She drew a deep, trembling breath and turned on her heel. She went away without saying another word. I didn't watch her leave. I did not close the door. Slowly, dramatically, just as in a movie. I slammed it shut, and this time, I walked away. The following morning, I awoke to silence. No missed calls or texts. No more desperate attempts to change the past. Jessica was gone for good this time. I stood in the center of my house. My house is no longer ours. And breathed in the silence. The kind of silence that felt like a fresh start, as if a chapter of my life had closed. It wasn't necessarily a relief. It was not even victory. It was only peace. Ryan called about noon. So, how does it feel? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm not feeling anything, I admit. And it is the finest part. He let out a low whistle. Man, a week ago she had you in hell. Now she's drowning. I took the divorce papers from the table and flipped through them one last time. Yeah, and I am about to make it official. At 3:15 p.m., I filed for divorce. I replaced the locks at 3:30 p.m. I sent one final message to Jessica. The papers were filed. Sign them, then go on. This is over. There is no feeling, no final words. This is just a fact. She did not respond. Not that day. Not the next. Not at all. Days have gone. Then weeks. I heard bits and pieces from common pals. Jessica was suffering. No job means no stability. There's no one left to influence. Brandon had dumped her the second the reaction began. People stopped inviting her to places. Her social media was inactive. She was absolutely alone. Did I feel badly? Not even a little. Because Jessica had based her life on lies. And when the truth was revealed, it engulfed her whole. Around a month later, Ryan and I went out for drinks. We sat at the bar, watching a basketball game on television. Allowing the past to slip into the background, Ryan smirked as he glanced over at me. Have you ever considered what you would say to her if she turned up right now? I took a sip of my drink and considered it. Then I shrugged. Nothing. Ryan laughed. Damn. That is frigid. Nah, I replied, laying my glass down. That is freedom. Here's the next story. The bar smelled of desperation and spilled booze. But that was not why I was there. I was present because of my wife. My perfect, loving, and faithful wife. Or so I used to think. It all started with the damned office party. I was there with her. I have a glass of scotch in my hand, watching the room with the bored detachment of an outsider. Office gatherings were not my thing. But Emily asked me to come. They said it would be enjoyable. She said she wanted me to meet her coworkers. I should have noticed how nervous she seemed when she mentioned it, should have caught the way. Her gaze shifted to a man across the room. Daniel. This was his name. I didn't know it at the time, but I noticed how she laughed with him and leaned close. Her fingers touched his arm, as if it were second nature. She looked at him as if he were the only person in the room. And when she realized I was watching, she straightened so quickly that it was as if I had caught her hand in the cookie jar. She stayed close to me for the remainder of the night, overcompensating, laughing too loudly at my jokes, kissing me a little too frequently. I should have challenged her then, but I did not. Instead, I let her take me home and kiss me, like if she was trying to erase what I had seen. I assured myself I was just imagining things, that I was overthinking things. And then she began avoiding Daniel. The following day, she ceased mentioning him, stopped discussing work at all. And those late nights began. At first, it was just one or two. Then it was once a week, twice a week, etc. I then opened the door. It was Thursday night. She was scheduled to work late, but something in my belly kept me awake. So I drove to her office. The lot was half empty. Her automobile was there. The lights in the building were still turned on. I took the elevator up. My heartbeat is pounding against my ribs. And as soon as I walked into the corridor, I heard it. Voices, a man's and a woman's laughing and whispering. The door of her office was slightly open. My feet felt like lead, and my body moved faster than my mind could control it. I pushed it open, and she was there with him. My wife, Emily, was sitting at her desk, her skirt hiked up, his hands on her thighs and face. Her expression was seared into my mind. She wasn't astonished. She was not scared. She appeared annoyed, like if I had done something wrong. As if I were the one destroying her night. Her initial words weren't. This is not as it appears. They were not. I could explain. They were. Oh, come on. Really? I said nothing at first. I just stood there looking, trying to figure out what I was seeing. My brain refused to accept it. My wife, Emily is sitting there as if she belonged to someone else. As if I were an inconvenience, Daniel. Because now I knew who the heck he was. I had the nerve to sigh, as if I had interrupted something essential. He didn't appear guilty, just frustrated. The man remained standing between her knees, still too near. And Emily. She did not push him away. She did not rush to straighten her skirt. She did not appear ashamed. She simply crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "Don't be theatrical," she said. "Don't be theatrical." As if I was the problem here. I felt something inside of me crack. Dramatic. My voice came out calm and steady because I was 2 seconds away from slamming my fist into Daniel's face. "You're sitting in the dark with your legs wrapped around a guy, and I'm being dramatic." Daniel had the audacity to dismiss the entire situation as trivial. "Dude, take some time to relax. Take some time to relax." I laughed, and it sounded weird in my own ears. My hands were shaking. But not for fear. From pure, ice-cold anger. "You're screwing my wife. I should just." "What? Go have a drink." "Let you finish." Emily groaned, as if I had embarrassed her. Embarrassing her? "Oh my God, you are acting like a psychopath." She got off the desk, pushing Daniel away, and finally fixed her skirt as if it mattered now. She had the guts to stare at me. "You cannot just come up at my workplace and start making charges." I actually took a step back and looked at her in surprise. Was she serious? Making charges? "Are you out of your mind?" I inquired, my voice rising. "I just walked in on you two. I don't need to make allegations, Emily. I just witnessed it with my own eyes." She rolled her eyes again. That smug, irritating little eye roll. "You're not sure what you saw." That was it. That was her only defense. Not, "I apologize." Not, "I made a mistake." Just gaslighting me in the face like I was the moron here. Daniel. Daniel, the dead man standing, had the audacity to smirk. "You are creating a scene, buddy." I saw red. I reached for him, but Emily pushed herself between us, smashing both hands into my chest. "Stop it." She snapped her nails and dug into my shirt. "Jesus, you are embarrassing me." I laughed again, for what else could I do? Making her feel embarrassed. She was standing in the center of her office. Her face remained hot from whatever she had been doing with him, and I was the humiliation. I took a careful step back and forced myself to breathe. If I didn't, I'd make a bad decision. Something he would not abandon. Emily sighed as if she was tired of me. She then turned to Daniel in front of me. "I will call you later." She would contact him later, as if I were a trifling annoyance. A speed bump in her night. I gazed at her. Really stared at her. The woman I'd spent years with. The woman I had trusted and loved. And then I realized something. I didn't know her. I don't recall leaving her office. One moment I was standing there. My heart was hammering, my hands clenched. As I saw my wife reject me as if I were some random stranger who had just inconvenienced her. And the next thing I knew, I was outdoors in the cold, my hands gripping the steering wheel so firmly that my knuckles hurt. I hadn't even processed it yet. It did not feel real. The image of her on that desk with him was etched in my mind, but my brain kept trying to convince me it wasn't real. That maybe I misunderstood. That I may have overreacted. But then her words resonated in my mind. "I will call you later." I threw my fist into the dashboard hard. The agony rushed up my arm, but it was scarcely noticeable. She wasn't apologizing. She didn't care. She hadn't even pretended to feel bad. I should have gone home. I should have taken a breather. Calm down. I figured out my next move. But I wasn't thinking clearly. My blood was boiling, and I couldn't return home. Come to our residence. To her house? Not yet. So, I did something stupid. I turned the car around and returned. Not to Emily's office. Go to Daniel's. I knew where the bastard worked. Emily had mentioned it once in passing, while still appearing to be a good wife. Some financial firm downtown. I had no strategy for what I was going to do when I got there. All I knew was that I could not let this go. I pulled up outside the building, my fingers pounding on the steering wheel. It was late, except for a few windows on the upper floors that remained lit. The office was dark. I sat there for a few minutes, my mind racing, before I could question myself. I got out of the automobile. The lobby was empty save for a security guy. When I stepped in, an older guy hardly looked up from his phone. I did not stop. I went straight for the elevators. I had no idea which floor Daniel worked on, but Emily had mentioned something about the 14th. I jabbed the button. The heart is thumping. The door slid open. The hallway is empty. Perfect. I started walking. Checking the nameplates on the doors. Dan Harris. I did not hesitate. I turned the doorknob. Of course, the break room was locked, but it was conveniently located next to his office. The lights were turned on inside, and someone was present. I moved closer, and suddenly I heard it. A voice. Her voice. Emily. What the hell was she doing here? She was meant to be in her office. She was meant to be dealing with the disaster she had just created. But no. She returned to join him. My heartbeat raced in my ears. I took another step, and pressed myself against the wall immediately outside the door. God, what a disaster. Emily was saying something. Her voice sounded lighthearted, as if she were laughing about it. About me? You should have seen his face, however. Poor guy. It looked like a kicked puppy. Daniel chuckled. He'll get over it, he stated. Or he will not. In either case, it's not my concern. Not his problem. Something within me cracked. I stepped through the doorway. They both froze. Emily's smile disappeared. Daniel straightened, his hand still on the table between them. For the first time that night, she appeared afraid. I gave a slow, frigid smile. Well, I replied, my voice dead calm. I suppose I should have knocked. Emily shot up so quickly. Her chair scratched across the tile, and her cheeks drained of color. She wasn't expecting me to find her here. She believed she had complete control over the issue. She assumed I had rushed out, gone home to cry. Perhaps drowned myself in a bottle of whiskey while she sat here with her man, laughing at what an idiot I was. Daniel did not move at first. He simply stared at me. Something flickered across his face. Maybe surprise. Maybe annoyance, but no fear. Not yet. He still thought it was humorous. He still felt I was a pitiful husband who would just accept it and go. Emily was the first to speak. Obviously, it was something foolish. What the hell are you doing here? Not. I apologize. Not. Let us chat. Not even. This is not as it appears. Pure arrogance. I closed the door behind me and stepped forward just enough to watch them squirm. My hands were firm now, and my heartbeat was calm. If I was angry before, I was completely different today. Something colder. I should ask you that, I said. My voice was not raised, it was nearly pleasurable. You claimed you were working late, but here you are again. Emily crossed her arms, but I noticed how her fingers twitched as if she wanted to fidget. She was nervous. Good, she should be. You should leave, she said, like if she were scolding a kid. This is ridiculous. Daniel stood and pushed his chair back. And for the first time, I noticed a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. He had gotten away with it before, possibly several times. I wasn't the first husband to catch him, but I might have been the first to not walk away. This is not the place, man, he said, trying to be firm. Go home. Go home, as if I were the one who needed to depart. Like I was an alien in my own marriage, I nearly laughed. Instead, I took another step and looked between them. Tell me something, I said with a pleasant voice. How long? Emily scoffed and tossed her hair over her shoulder. This woman has incredible audacity. Does it matter? Did it matter? He listened intently to the lady I had loved and created a life with. And in that moment, I had no feelings for her. No love, no suffering. Not even anger. It's just disgust. You know what I said while shaking my head? You're correct. It does not. I turned to leave. But first, I retrieved my phone from my pocket and pressed play. Emily's voice permeated the break area. Loud and clear. Just minutes ago, she had an arrogant, sarcastic tone. You should have seen his face, however. The poor guy looked like a kicked dog. Daniel's laughter followed. He'll get over it or not. In either case, it's not my concern. Silence. Emily became rigid. Daniel paled. I turned back to face them, allowing the realization to sink in. You? Emily started. But she ran out of words. I gave a slow, bitter smile. Oh, don't stop now, I said. Things get better. And then I sent it to everyone. Emily's family, her boss, her coworkers, mutual friends, everyone. Emily rushed for my phone, but I jumped aside and shoved it into my pocket. You're psycho, she shrieked. What the hell did you do? I tilted my head. I'm enjoying the way she eventually looked. Afraid. I simply let everyone hear the real you. Daniel took a step forward, lifting his hands as if to play mediator. But I was not interested. I was finished here. I turned to leave, but not before taking one final glance at Emily. We're finished. I just remarked that by the time you get home, all of your belongings will be on the lawn. I then walked away, leaving everyone surprised and horrified in silence. And for the first time that night, I felt terrific. I drove home with the clarity that only comes from burning everything down. The streets were vacant, with street lights producing long, extending shadows on the tarmac. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Emily. Over and over. I'm desperate now. But I did not pick up. Allow her to panic. Let her suffer. She earned it. When I got into the driveway, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't simply leaving her. I was deleting her. I opened the front door and went directly to the bedroom. Emily's side of the closet was loaded with the luxury outfits she adored, the ones I had paid for, and the ones she had worn on her dates with Daniel. I peeled them from the hangers one at a time. Shoes, outfits, and handbags. All of it. I did not stop there. I yanked open drawers, swept her perfume bottles off the vanity, and ripped framed portraits off the walls, leaving no sign of her. By the time I was finished, there was a pile of her belongings placed on the front lawn like garbage awaiting pickup. And it was exactly who she was now. Garbage. I went back inside and locked the door behind me. I was finished. More than done. But then, headlights. A automobile drove up to the curb. The tires screeched as it jerked to a stop. 1 second later, the driver's side door flew open. And there she was. Emily. Breathless, furious, and wild-eyed in the light of the street lamp. And for the first time all night, she appeared to know exactly what she had done. She dashed toward the house, coming to a halt when she noticed the mess I had made. Her belongings were scattered around the yard. The fancy bags, the neatly arranged clothing, the jewelry cases are tumbling open into the lawn. Her mouth dropped open. "Oh my God," she breathed. I stepped out on the porch, arms crossed. "Take your belongings and go." My voice was icy. She turned to me, her eyes wild. Finally, she realized she couldn't win this struggle. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "You are actually." I laughed quickly and sharply. "Did you think I was joking?" She gave forth a breathless, hysterical chuckle. "Like this was funny. Jesus, you are such a child," she snapped, her voice harsh. "You're throwing a fit because I had a little fun." "A little fun." I actually saw red. I stepped forward so quickly that she flinched. "Fun." My voice was low and calm, lying to my face. "Sneaking around and giggling about it with your boyfriend. That sounds fun to you." She jutted her chin out in defiance. "I wouldn't have needed to sneak around if you weren't so boring." Boring? That was it. That was the moment I realized there was nothing left to salvage. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I opened up my financial app. Emily's face contorted in perplexity as I pushed a few keys, draining our joint account directly in front of her. Her jaw fell. "What? What are you doing now?" I shrugged. "Separate finals." She moved forward and grabbed my arm. "You cannot merely." I pulled back before she could touch me. I already did. Her gaze shifted to my phone, then to the home. The realization set in. The house was in my name. The cars represent the savings. Now it's just mine. She had nothing. For the first time that night, Emily went into a panic. "Baby Chaucy. Come on." She spoke, her voice suddenly soft and syrupy. The manipulator. She had always moved forward. "We don't need to do this. Let us just. Okay, let's talk inside." I smiled. "You do not reside here anymore." Her breath caught. I moved my chin toward her belongings. "Take your trash and leave." She simply stood there, staring at me as if she didn't recognize me. Perhaps she didn't. Because the man who once loved her no longer exists. And the man standing in front of her would never let her win. Emily did not move. She simply stood there, her chest rising and falling in rapid, short gasps, her fists clasped at her sides. I could see it occurring in real time, the gears working in her mind. She's considering her alternatives. Her preferred method of control had always been manipulation. But now she'd run out of tricks. Her voice softened. "Baby, please. You do not mean this." I laughed loudly, sharply, cruelly, letting her know I meant every word. She blinked quickly, her lips twitching. Fake tears. I'd seen her cry for real before. And this was not it. This was a performance. She stepped forward. Her arms lifted slightly, as if she were ready to reach for me. "Let's go in." She could. "We can discuss this." I tilted my head into my house. Her nostrils flared. The mask slipped for half a second, before returning to its original position. "Our residence." She corrected, speaking softly as if she were teaching something to a kid. "We created a life here, baby. You don't toss that away because of a misunderstanding." I moved closer, my voice lowered to a lethal whisper. "You're right," I said. "I don't throw away items because of misunderstandings, but this." I gestured between us. "This was not a misunderstanding. You chose to repeatedly betray me. And now you're suffering the repercussions." Her breath caught. Suddenly, the crocodile tears vanished. Her gaze sharpened, and her mouth tightened into something cold. Something mean. There she was. The true Emily. "You're actually going to ruin everything over a silly little mistake she made. You're a sucker." I shut her off. "Don't." The single word froze her in place. "Don't try to twist it," I added, my voice remaining calm to calm. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and you expected to get away with it." I curled my lips into a slow smile. How does that work out for you? She glared. Do you see that? Then her true colors came revealed. You're pathetic, she snarled. Do you believe you are punishing me? You're only confirming that I needed someone else. You are feeble, predictable, a joke. I did not react. Not even one blink. She was desperate now, doing whatever she could to damage me and retake control. But she'd already lost. I dug into my pocket again, and this time I found something worse than my phone. A folded sheet of paper. Emily frowned. What is that? I flipped it open and read the first line aloud. Petition to dissolve the marriage. She remained still. I smiled as I held it up with 2 fingers. No warmth, no affection. Simply the joy of a man who had just destroyed the woman who attempted to destroy him. You cheated, I replied simply. And now you know what cheaters deserve. Emily rushed at the papers. Her face contorted with panic. You can't just. I grabbed them back before she could take them. Oh, I can. I gave her a sarcastic pout and had already filed them. She staggered. I literally staggered back, like if I'd just struck her. I should have felt bad. I did not. I shoved the papers in her hands. This is over, I said. You're finished. You have nothing. There's no husband, no home, no money, and no future here. I cocked my head. I would say I feel sorry for you, but I do not. Her hands trembled as she looked at the documents. She opened her mouth, but for the first time in her life, she was speechless. I genuinely grinned. Then I turned and walked back inside, slamming the door in her face. I stood inside, resting against the closed door, listening to the startled stillness on the other side. Emily did not move. Not at first. I envisioned her standing there, clutching her divorce papers. Her thoughts raced to find a way out of this situation and recover control. But she had run out of moves. The doorbell rang once, twice, followed by a succession of furious, desperate jabs. Her voice came next, muffled by the wood. Let me in. We need to discuss this. I didn't respond. I walked into the living room, grabbed a half-empty bottle of whiskey, and dropped into the sofa. My phone's buzzing had ceased. She must have recognized that calling me wouldn't get her anywhere. Now she was trying. The sole remaining tactic, begging. Please, baby. She called, her voice quivering. Let us be adults about this. Adults. The irony was almost humorous. I poured a glass and enjoyed the heat as it slipped down my throat. The knock on the door became into banging on the door. Her voice was sharper now, with desperation giving way to wrath. You cannot do this to me. I laughed. A chilly and harsh sound. She still didn't understand it. She believed she could bully her way back in. Twisted the situation till I caved. It had worked before. She'd always known how to play me, but she didn't realize how deeply she had shattered me tonight. I stood up, walked back to the door, and opened it slightly to view her face. Her eyes were crimson, and her cheeks were blotchy. The ideal image of a woman whose world had crashed down. Why are you doing this? She demanded. We are married. We are expected to work through things, not just. You threw away this marriage the moment you decided I wasn't enough. I cut my voice flat. You made your decision, Emily. You must now adapt to your new situation. She swallowed hard, her gaze darting over my face, searching for any hint of vulnerability. There was none left. Okay, she said, her tone becoming more conciliatory. Look, I messed up, but it was an error. One error, and you're ready to throw it all away. One mistake. The arrogance almost had me laughing again. Was that it? I asked gently. Only one. Her quiet conveyed everything I needed to know. I moved back, holding the door open. You have 5 minutes to move your belongings off my grass. They will then be thrown away. Her eyes expanded. You would not dare to look at me for a moment. I assumed she was going to fight and tried to push her way in, but she must have noticed something in my gaze. Something that made her realize there was no point. No more falsehoods. No more manipulation. She twisted on her heel and stomped down the steps toward her belongings. I stood in the doorway, observing her with dispassionate attention. She moved frantically, throwing clothes into her car and cursing under her breath. It wasn't until she reached for a little box near the bottom of the pile that I felt anything move. Regret. Maybe because I knew what was inside that package. Our recollections. Photographs from our wedding. Tickets are from our first date. Small, dumb keepsakes from a life that once meant anything to me. She paused. Her fingers trembled as she held the package to her chest for a second. Her eyes met mine, and I caught a glimpse of vulnerability, of the lady I had fallen in love with. Unfortunately, it was too late. Take it. I replied harshly. This is all you have left. Her lips formed a thin line without saying anything else. She turned, got into her car, and drove away, leaving a path of gravel and dust behind her. I stood there in the silence, watching the taillights fade down the street, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of serenity. She was gone, and now it was time to reconstruct the life she'd attempted to destroy. The silence in the home had changed now. It was not tense, heavy, or laden with the weight of a falsehood. I had not yet discovered. It was clean. Free. Emily's ghost lingered in the air, her perfume clinging to the couch's fabric and the tiniest trace of her voice ringing in the silence. But it would not last. She was gone, and she'd soon become nothing more than a horrible memory. I grabbed a garbage bag and began moving, the bedding gone. I stripped the bed and tossed it in the suitcase, along with her pillow. Her silly ornamental candles, which I never lit, ended up in the trash. Every framed photograph of us was broken one by one. I wrenched them from the walls, the glass shattering in my hands. But I did not feel it. I didn't care. Emily had spent years making this house her own, choosing the curtains, rearranging the furniture, and filling every nook with everything she felt would make us look like the ideal couple. But now I was returning it. By the time I finished, the house was nearly unrecognizable. The bedroom, her meticulously managed collection, was reduced to nothing. The living room was cleansed of anything she had touched. The kitchen was stripped of the trivial items she cherished. Her favorite coffee mug. She insisted on buying wine glasses, despite the fact that neither of us drank wine. I was getting rid of her in every way possible. Then I opened the closet. That's when I discovered it. A shoebox was tucked away in the back, under winter jackets and old baggage. Plain, unlabeled shoebox. At first, I assumed it was just more of her stuff that I had overlooked. But something about how it was hidden made my stomach turn. I pushed it down with weirdly steady hands, raised the lid, and my entire body turned cold. Inside, there were letters, notes, and small bits of paper with hasty handwriting. But not mine. Daniel's. The first picked one up. My heart is beating in my ears. The paper was creased after being folded and unfolded 100 times. I can't quit thinking about last night. I'm sorry you had to go home to him. Another underline. When are you planning to inform him? He does not deserve this. Underline another. I love you. Do you adore me? I love you. I exhaled sharply and laughed bitterly. She hadn't only been cheating. She had been creating a future with him. This wasn't some fling or pointless office affair. She had planned something. Perhaps she waited until she was certain Daniel would commit. Perhaps she was waiting for me to find out, so she didn't have to play the evil guy. In any case, she was never going to stay, despite what she had told me. My fingers tightened over the letters, the edges crumpling under my hold. Then slowly and deliberately, I walked to the kitchen, got a lighter, and stepped onto the back porch. I lit the first letter on fire, and watched as the flames licked up the paper, twisting the edges, and reducing the words to ash. I then lighted another, and another, until every letter, secret, and whispered confession between them became nothing more than smoke in the wind. She'd already stolen enough from me. She wasn't going to wait another second. The fire burned quickly. Too fast. I wanted to appreciate it. To watch. Each word represents betrayal. Blackened and curled. To let the flames destroy every secret she had hidden from me. But within minutes, the letters were reduced to smoking ash, scattered into the darkness as if they never existed. Just as Emily would. I stood for a long time, staring at the blazing embers. My head felt empty, as if I'd burnt through every ounce of rage and unbelief. The treachery was still present. It would always be present. But something had shifted. She wasn't important anymore. I returned to the house. My footsteps were slow and deliberate. She had touched every inch of this house. She shaped it. But that was just temporary. Soon, this house would be mine again. I stepped inside and locked the door. More out of finality than necessity. Emily was not coming back. She saw no need to. But as I made my way through the dimly lit rooms, my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown caller. I focused on it, my jaw stiffening. Emily needed to be. Perhaps she found the letters missing. Perhaps she discovered I was stronger than she believed. Perhaps she couldn't accept her loss. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. This time, a voicemail notice appeared. I sighed softly and rolled my shoulders. I'm willing my pulse to slow. Then, after a long pause, I hit play. However, Emily's voice did not come through the speaker. That was Daniel's. Hello, guy. His tone was nonchalant. Too casual. I could hear a smirk. The same attitude he displayed when he advised me to relax out. I guess Emily told you about us. A brief chuckle. That stung. My fingers had clenched into a fist, but I did not stop listening. She is a piece of work, and what she told you meant nothing. That it was simply a mistake. Another laugh. Smug. Did she tell you she loved me? Because she did. It still does. My breath left my lungs in a single quick, controlled exhale. Do you think you've won? Daniel continued, his voice full of amusement. Man, you lost the moment she met me. She was mine the entire time. You were just a safety net, the dull husband she had settled for. That was it. That was the moment I realized I'd made a mistake. Not leaving her, not by throwing her out, but by assuming this was over. I let the message play out, my entire body frozen in place and scarcely breathing. I guess she's unhappy right now. Daniel mused. I should check on her. Perhaps keep her company. She doesn't have a place to stay, as you can tell by her low chuckle. The voicemail ended with a beep, and I began to move. I did not think. I did not pause. I grabbed my keys and dashed out the door before I realized where I was going. But I knew exactly where I could find them. And once I did, this would be over for good. I drove like a man possessed. The city lights flew past me, streaks of white and red, as I sped through the streets, my fingers aching from holding the wheel so tightly. My thoughts was a war zone. Rage. Adrenaline and a dark, burning yearning to put an end to this. Daniel felt it was a game. He believed he could gloat, laugh, spit on the debris of my life and walk away unharmed. He was wrong. I knew precisely where Emily was going. She didn't have anywhere else. Her parents lived hours away, and I doubted she'd crawl into a friend's couch after what I'd revealed. Now she'd go to the only location where she felt protected. Daniel's flat. I drew up to his building and turned off the engine. I am having difficulty breathing. His automobile was there. Hers was not. I climbed out. Every muscle in my body coiled tightly. The air was chilly and biting against my skin, but I scarcely noticed it. My mind was focused on one thing. I'm finishing this. I approached his door and knocked. Once. Twice. No response. I pounded again, but harder this time. A pause followed by footsteps. The door flung open, and there he was, Daniel, smug and thoughtless, standing there wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, like he had no regrets in the world. He smirked. Well, that was quick. I did not hesitate. Punched him. The impact ripped through the hallway, forcing his head back as he stumbled into the doorway. He let out a curse, stumbled, and clutched his jaw. What's going on? I grabbed him by his shirt and pushed him back inside, closing the door behind me. Do you think this is funny? My voice sounded low. Lethal. You think you can wreck my life and joke about it? He wiped his mouth to look for blood. Jesus, man, you have to. I hit him harder this time. He smashed against the counter, knocking down a half-empty beer bottle. Say it again, I hissed. Say something more about how she was yours. Say something more about how I lost. His breath was ragged now, and his hands were raised in a feeble attempt at defense. The hubris was gone. He had spent so much time kidnapping other men's wives that he hadn't considered what would happen if one of them fought back. He looked up at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. You are insane. I smiled. No, I replied, I'm free. Then, as soon as I had arrived, I stepped back. I let him recover his breath and feel the weight of my decision to let him go. I started to leave, but before I did, I looked over my shoulder, my voice calm. Even if you ever called me again, if you ever approach my ex-wife again, don't even think about me. I caught his eyes and held them, allowing him to feel every ounce of truth in my words. I'm not going to stop after a few punches the next time. Daniel gulped hard and pressed a shaky hand on his face. He believed me. I departed without saying anything else. I could feel it as soon as I went outside. The weight of everything has finally lifted. I'd squandered years of my life loving a lady who never deserved me. I had allowed her to lie to me, control me, and break me. But I was no longer broken. By the time I came home, the sun had risen above the horizon. The mansion is bathed in beautiful golden light. My house is mine. I stepped inside, locked the door, and took a deep, steady breath. It had ended, and for the first time in a long time, I felt complete. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.